Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming along to Nature Live here in the Attenborough studio at the Natural History Museum. Nature Live is a daily programme of events. Have any of you been to any of our events before? You guys at the front, a few hands up. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming back today and seeing us. If you've been before, you'll know all about Nature Live and the format. If you haven't been with us before, Nature Live is a daily programme of events designed to bring to life and bring you closer to the scientific work that goes on here at the museum. We're much, much more than just the galleries that you see as you walk around. The Natural History Museum has one of the largest and most comprehensive collections of natural history specimens in the world, and it is primarily a research organisation using those collections by scientists to further their understanding of nature. And each day we bring different scientists into the studio and ask them to share a bit about their work and what they get up to. It's also an opportunity for you guys to ask questions and find out a bit more. So at any point in the next 30 minutes, if you have any questions at all for us, please just raise your hand up nice and high so we can see them, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. Now, today's event is called Notes from the Chicken Pen. Quite a cryptic title. You'll find out exactly why we've called it that in due course. But I have a question for you folks. Have any of you ever been to the jungle? Hands up if you've been to the jungle. Okay, we've got a few people. Excellent. Well, today's Nature Live is all about fieldwork in the jungle and finding out what that's really like, what the experiences are like for the scientists that go out there, why they go out there, and the things that they can find. So, as I say, do feel free to ask our scientists today if you have any questions. I'm joined by two of our scientists today. I've got Luis Urena here from the Panama Wildlife Conservation Organization, which has been collaborating very recently with the Natural History Museum here. And next to Luis, we have Beulah Garner, who works in the Life Sciences Department here in the Natural History Museum. So thank you very much, guys, for coming along today.
Thank you.
They've recently been out on some field work, so we're going to be asking them lots of questions today about what that was like. But before we do that, Beulah, if I can start with you, could you tell us a little bit about what you do here in the museum?
Yeah, I'm a curator here, so that means I look after a very large part of the museum's collection. So our scientific collection holds upwards of about 80 million specimens, and I work in the Coleoptera section, which is the beetles, and within that section we have 9 million specimens. We're going out, as you will learn today, all the time to add to that number. If you can we have the visualizer on this drawer here? I've got a drawer of beetles here that just show...
Yeah, we can bring up the camera, the central camera, sorry.
A very small proportion of the wonderful diversity of the beetles throughout the world. So in the world, there are 400,000 known species, and we as a taxonomic institution, which means we are in the business of naming and classifying animals, are identifying new species every year, every week of the year, in fact, and I'm sure we brought some new ones back from Panama. In fact, I'm certain that we did that. I work on a very smaller part of the collection, which is, you can see here. These are the, what are they called? Tiger beetles. And they're part of the Carabidae, which are ground beetles, and the ground beetles number about 40,000 species in the world. So I have beetles in my collection I'm probably never going to understand or see, because I simply haven't got the hours in the day to look at them, to open all of those drawers. Because you see these drawers here, we've got 22,000 of them behind the scenes in our collection. So.
That's fantastic. Sounds like a fascinating job. And Luis, you work with Panama Wildlife Conservation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your role is with that group?
Well, Panama Wildlife Conservation is an organization based in Panama trying to understand the biodiversity that we have in our country. We approached Beulah and the Natural History Museum a couple of months ago because I have this idea that brings scientists from the UK back in Panama and help us to understand a little bit more about the biodiversity that we have in Panama, and also hopefully to protect the national parks and all the wildlife that we have in our country.
Fantastic. Have any of us been to Panama? I certainly haven't been to Panama before. Anyone in the audience? got a few hands up there. Okay, we've got a short clip, video clip we can play, just to give you a sense of what it might be like to go there. So we'll play that clip and see what you think. It certainly looks very nice. Well, that looked lovely, and that
not the reality.
No, that was the
That's
the
paradise.
travel
We were not
brochure.
in
It looked
paradise.
really idyllic and pleasant. But I think we're going to find out that when you go out there, where you were going, certainly it wasn't quite the same. So could you describe a little bit about what is Panama like as a country? You know, what's the sort of weather, the climate like out there?
Yes.
Well, I'm from Panama. Panama is a tropical country. Usually it's about 30 degrees, 33, so year-round, very, very humid during the rainy season, 6 months a year, and then very dry. And usually in the video that you see is very green, and there's a lot of cloudy forests. And up there in the mountains, it rains all the time, and it's also very hot at the same time. So it's nice, yeah.
Excellent. And where exactly in Panama did you go?
Well, we went to the middle Panama in an area called Santa Fe National Park. My parents live around that area, and I've been there since I was a child with my friends, and also when I was studying biology, we used to go there to collect samples of biological samples. And I approached them to say, you know, why not go into Panama? You see, where Santa Fe is very green, so it's all virgin tropical forest, and there's not much information about this national park, and we're trying to gather more information about it. And as you see that photograph, we trek for 4 hours up on those mountains, back somewhere there, and then we didn't expect to spend more than half an hour, and we were doing for 4 hours, and very tiring, but it was very worth it, yeah.
So a long trek through the jungle, and very hot and sticky and sweaty, I imagine. So yeah, already we're sort of moving away from that lovely white sand beaches that we might imagine it's like. That's fantastic. So how did you get there? Because from the picture there, it looks pretty hard to get to. How did you travel there?
Yeah, I've travelled to quite a lot of South American countries in the work that I do. It's part of our remit as an international institution is to collect specimens from around the world to inform biodiversity research, conservation research, and all other sciences, in fact. And I've had some tricky situations. One site in French Guiana we had to be helicoptered in because it was so remote. And another one in Ecuador, there were planes and bus journeys and riverboat rides. Panama, horses. So I knew that we were going to get so far by road, and then we would have to find another method of transport. And Luis was like, it's fine, we'll get horses. And I'm thinking, horses, really? And yes, horses. So I arrived in Panama with 8 bags of equipment. You can see me here behind the scenes in our collection, feeling a little bit concerned about how I, as a solo traveller, was going to get 8 bags, very heavy bags, halfway across the world to carry out our research. But unfortunately, Luis was waiting for me at the airport.
Yep.
But
I was also concerned in that photograph, as you can see, because when I agreed to organize all these logistics, I didn't realize they were coming with so much equipment, and I only organized 2 horses, and I said, you know, I think we're gonna need like 20 of them, and then we're gonna get 20 horses in the jungle. But I think we managed to get 4, and then plus a very nice, helpful people that help us with the rest of the equipment, so it was good. Yeah.
That's amazing. I can imagine the look on the check-in person's face when you appear at the airport with that many bags.
Yes, I do have to pull the Natural History Museum card out sometimes and say, don't you know who I am? I work for the Natural History Museum. Of course you're going to give me free passage. But we pay for the excess baggage, but we carry a lot of odd equipment that looks very suspicious under airport scanners. But this was an absolutely amazing trip because it took me back to the days of the very first collectors of natural history, say Charles Darwin, who were going out to these places that were even uncharted. They didn't have the healthcare we have, they didn't have internet or telephones or electricity or means of transport that we have to us now. And every time that got tough, or I was about to have a little bit of a meltdown in the jungle, I'd think about these people and how hard it must have been for them. But this is how they would have done it. So some things just don't change. And we're accessing incredibly remote areas around the world, and we have to expect that we're not going to have a very easy time of it getting there, because these are the places that matter the most because they're the most under threat to things like agriculture and general deforestation.
You mentioned there that people like Darwin would travel out to these remote locations, pure untouched areas, and collect things, and that's something that we're still doing today. Could you tell us a little bit about why it's important that even today we still collect our specimens?
Yeah, sure. I've got a drawer of Darwin specimens here, unbelievably. If we could have a look at those. You're all welcome to come down and have a closer look in a moment. Now, our collection goes back 250 years, and those people were going to localities that may not even exist anymore because of habitat destruction. They may not even exist as political or geographical entities anymore. So what we have is this incredible resource that we can continue to build on. So when we look at, if you have a look at the specimens closer later on, you'll see data labels underneath each specimen. So nothing in this museum comes in without receiving a data label. And that label will tell us where in the world these specimens were collected, by whom, and when. So we can look at anything that we have in the collection and say, oh, that was found on the island of Sao Tome in 1901. Is it there today? Does that habitat even exist anymore? And that's really, really important. It's a unique resource, and it's essential evermore today with the increase in habitat destruction and climate change that we continue to collect.
And it's a position that the Natural History Museum is particularly strong in because our collections have been growing for such a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you show us, give us an idea of how you collect things? Because I've tried to collect things, and it might involve going out and sort of beating a tree or something or a bush and trying to see what comes out of it. But I'm sure you're a bit more sophisticated in how you go about it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this project that Luis and I worked on is part of what we're calling a biodiversity initiative here in the museum. And what we're aiming to do is collect in a very standardized way to a protocol which can be repeated around the world at any time, and it's repeatable. So we can go back to Panama next year and go to exactly the same locality that we were previously and repeat those trapping methods. And we can then assess what we're finding over time, whether there's a difference in seasonality, for example, or whether there's effects, sort of fringe effects from agriculture, that kind of thing. So we employ quite a few methods. Can we have a look at the Malaise trap, maybe? There you go. So this is called a Malaise trap, which is a bit of a misleading name. It essentially is a net that insects will fly into, and then they hit the net and they fly up, particularly wasps and flies. And there's a little collecting pot at the top that you can see. So that's filled with 100% alcohol, which preserves the specimens instantly. And that's emptied every day because in a tropical environment, you can imagine it's pretty much swarming with various insects. And then you see some tin takeout trays along the bottom. They are for the insects that will fall down rather than falling up. So in the trays in the bottom, we're more likely to collect beetles. So this is a really effective method of trapping, and it's working whilst we're off doing other things. You can see from the locality there, I think, that it's in a bit of a clearing. So we have to assess the jungle for what is the best area where we think we can optimize the amount of insects that we can find. So that's in a clearing, and also that it's on a slope, so insects will fly from dark to light. So we're hoping that that was in a flight path, and indeed we did catch quite a lot of insects in that trap.
Now, a lot of insects are actually nocturnal, aren't they? And they tend to fly around more at night.
Yeah.
And you've got a really good technique for catching those too, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. We use a method called light trapping, which you can see here. This is quite a disappointing photo because ordinarily it would be swarming with insects. But, this one is brilliant. On this occasion we were competing with the moon. So insects are attracted to light, and they are attracted to certain frequencies as well. So we trap with mercury vapor bulbs, which wouldn't have been available to the likes of Darwin or Wallace back in the day. So we can optimize the number and also the diversity of species that we catch by using this method. But it's absolutely awful. The amount of times I've been stung by wasps using this method. I've been stung in the eye by really big moths in Borneo, like that big, wasps. So they get in your ears, your mouth, your nose. It's not for everyone, that method, but it's very effective.
And I heard a story about one of your colleagues, I think, who was standing on the other side of the net and, as a practical joke, sort of pinged the sheet, and all the insects suddenly flew off onto the poor soul on the other side.
Yeah, not funny.
No, not at all. Do you have any questions for Beulah or Lewis at this point? Yes, at the front there, young man. Do you know how many you caught?
In Panama or by the light trap? Thousands. So we don't know yet how many we caught in Panama. We didn't catch very many because the moon was bright. But in Borneo, when I went to Borneo, we caught about 4,000 insects just by that method in 3 weeks. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work for when we get back.
Insects out there, definitely. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes? Did you think that this would be a good method to catch things? Yeah. So did you know that before you went out? It was a good way of catching.
We know a lot about the way insects see. So they see differently to we do. They see in a different light frequency. So we use a special bulb that they can see better than us, and it attracts them. And that is one of the best methods. And also, you get things that are flying at night that won't fly in the daytime. So what we're doing is we're looking at not only over time, but within a 24-hour period as well. So we look from the forest floor, we look in the soil, we look on top of the soil, we look at things that are flying at head height, and also what's up in the canopy as well. And then we collect it in the night time. So we work really hard to try and get a very good picture of what's happening in the jungle.
And how long were you guys out there for collecting? Was it? We were there for 3 weeks, and this particular expedition, the collection time lasts for about 8 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, we managed to collect a couple of thousand, I would say, right?
I think over 10,000.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, in the 3 weeks, yeah. Overall, we anticipate about 10 to 15,000 insects.
It's incredible what you can collect in a relatively short period of time as well. So you're staying out in the jungle for 3 weeks.
Oh, sorry, there's a question just there.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. That's okay. New species. How many new species do you think you've collected?
We don't know that yet, but the way that we kind of know that is I know what I have in the collection, and I know what to expect to find anywhere in the world. And then when I see something that I don't really recognize, I'm like, okay, that might be new. And this happened to us in Borneo. I sent my boss up a tree, which is against our health and safety regulations. So I thought, well, he's senior to me, he can go up the tree, because there was this amazing fern. And so he chopped the fern down, brought it down, and we collected lots of tiny brown beetles, probably about only 4 millimeters long. And we saw one and we thought, that's new. And not only is it a new species, but it's a new genus. So it hasn't ever been discovered before, simply because it was in this very tiny microhabitat that, of course, no one has ever looked at. So it's all about sort of going out and investigating every single nook and cranny of the world. But with this project, we're using DNA to record diversity as best we can, because, as I've said, we've got so many thousands of specimens that we've brought back. Naming them is a really slow process, and oftentimes there isn't the expertise in the world to identify the diversity of species that we have. So now we're using very advanced next generation sequencing, which will probably mean nothing to you, hardly means anything to me. It's very complicated, and to someone that's just a curator. But that technology can help us to understand diversity and abundance in forests much quicker than just by using traditional methods where we would identify something based on the morphological features that it has.
Excellent. So when you were out in the jungle, what was it like being there and living there? What were your living conditions like out there?
We lived in a chicken pen.
That's the name of the Nature Live today.
Well, we can't expect to go to these places and it be luxurious. Some places in the world, there'll be research stations. And I have stayed in those, particularly in French Guiana. We stayed in a station, and my colleague said to me, "Oh, you'll be fine, Beulah. They helicopter in red wine and baguettes every 3 days." And I was like, "No, they don't. Don't be ridiculous." And they do, because that's the French, and that's how they roll. They have a certain level of gastronomic luxury to uphold in the jungle. We, however, didn't have that in Panama. It was quite a shock. I mean, we knew it was going to be rough because there's no resources. We were entering a national park where there's very little human habitation. And as much as Luis and the Panama Wildlife Conservation could provide logistics, which we couldn't have done it without them, even Luis was a little bit shocked to find that we had to move the chickens out and make way for our tents.
Yeah, it was quite funny because when I met Beulah a couple of months ago, and they say, okay, let's go to Panama, I told her and her boss that Panama is going to be very, very wild. So everything we're going to organize for you guys, just go there with your open mind. And then when Beulah arrived with her assistant, and they were like, can we go back? I said, no, there's no ways. But then we stay in this house with a very lovely family, and they're very accommodating. So basically what they did is they took out all the chickens from that area. And then it was raining, so it was the only area that it was flat and dry. And then that's where we set up camps, and every day all the chickens were trying to get in because that's where they sleep. So we were trying to keep them out because it was very funny, but it's noisy as well at 4 in the morning.
Yes, yeah.
It's amazing. Just show us what you're giving up in the name of science. Although the chickens didn't appreciate.
We work hard for our supper.
What you were doing.
Yeah.
Now, Beulah, when you were out there, you actually kept a video diary of some of the things you're getting up to, and we're going to play you a short clip now that Beulah took of a walk around the house and the campsite. You can have a look.
It's me very snug in the evening. So, onto the general area. Here is where the men shave in the morning, and also grind something in this thing here, and this is the washing line, and over here is where I sometimes wash my hair from this tap. I believe this is last week's laundry. This here is the shower that I've yet to make work. And here is little Chumbo. Poor Chumbo. Hello Chumbo. Hola perro. Say hola. Hola Inglaterra. Poor Chumbo suffers from not enough food and what looks like a huge tapeworm as well, I imagine. Through here is what I would generously call the refectory, where we eat along with the chickens and the dogs. And in here is the kitchen. And here's where we do the washing up. It's all quite delightful. Who needs a gap year when you can come to Camp Isleta? Here is the offending chicken that starts cackling probably about 5 o'clock in the morning, although
cackling to, get out of my house.
Exactly.
I want to get back into my room. Oh, it's fantastic seeing that. One thing you might notice though that's missing from that clip, the toilet. Sooner or later you're going to have to go, and I was very intrigued as to where the toilet facilities were. We've got another clip to show you of where you needed to go if you went to the bathroom.
Well, here we are at base camp, walking the treacherous path to the lavatory. You're about to be in for a splendid treat, as this is the path I walk morning and night. I try to hold it in for as long as possible because this is never very pleasant, but it's home. Welcome to my toilet. Let's have a look inside, shall we? And there it is. Fully flushing, a nice soft toilet seat. Unfortunately, all you can see is a black hole. I try not to look down there whenever possible. But when we look outside and see the view into Santa Fe National Park, we can contemplate our navel and be at one with ourselves.
Amazing. And I guarantee my toilet certainly does not have a view like that. I don't think many of us
you
can,
can't have it all,
can boast
Alistair.
that.
You can't
Everything
have
has
it all.
pros and cons to everything, I guess. So it sounds like it's quite an adventure, I think, when you go out to these places. Very, very different to the sort of lab work that we might think a lot of scientists get up to. But once you've done that collecting, you've got those specimens, what's next? What's the next stage in the process?
Well, for this project, we're going two ways. Part of the samples that we bring back will go for molecular research, but then the other part will go into the collection, as you've seen, on pins as mounted specimens. So the way that we collect is usually like this, in a big jar of 100% alcohol. This has to be decanted in order to fly. Obviously, airlines would be a little bit suspicious if we brought this much alcohol back. And then as soon as we get back to the museum, they have to be recanted in order to preserve their DNA.
Okay, if we bring up the visualizer now, we can actually see this
So
up close. There we go.
you can have a closer look at this when you come down, and this is what we call beetle soup. This is a much cleaned up version for your pleasure. It is a lot smellier than this usually, and you can smell it when you come down. But you can see that there's a huge amount of diversity. There's all sorts of shapes and sizes, and this is where the DNA research comes in, because although some of these more big flashy individuals we can certainly name using traditional methods, some of the more smaller creatures are very difficult to identify. So this project's quite exciting because it means that we can identify much faster what we've brought back from the field. Because ordinarily it would take years. We have material in our collections. There's a particular trip that went to Borneo about 20 years ago, and there is material that still sits in alcohol like this because certain groups we simply just don't have the expertise in the world to be able to identify them. So.
That's amazing. Now the work that you're doing out there sounds fantastic. I'm curious, Luis, why do you consider it really important that organisations like the Natural History Museum go out to Panama, where you're from, and actually carry out this research?
One of the beauties of this project is that allows a relatively quick identification of new species in very biodiverse areas. And as Beulah just explained, that us as an organization, we wanted to bring the expertise to Panama and help scientists to identify as much as possible these species in protected areas of Panama. Developing countries, usually they don't have resources to do this kind of research, and the tropical forests are disappearing very quickly. And one of the beauties of this is that allows scientists to identify potentially new species in a large scale, so we can approach governments and other type of organizations and tell them this area is very biodiverse, it needs to be protected, we need to do something about it now that we have it before it disappears. That's the importance of having organizations like the Natural History Museum involved in this sort of research.
Well, you're both doing fantastic jobs, I think. Are there any plans to collaborate again in the future?
Well, hopefully, yes. I'm aiming to do more expeditions like this, and actually we're planning another one, maybe next year. And the interesting thing is that is there 150 years collection? Or
yeah, we hope to go to a locality called Volcan
Cherokee, yeah.
Volcan Cherokee, which is a very famous collecting locality. It's the only volcano in Panama.
Yeah.
And about 150 years ago, some very famous collectors went there, and we hold their collection. So the idea is that we go back to this locality and we employ the same collecting methods that they did, and we see what's changed over time. So it's going to be, hopefully, if we receive the grant funding, it will be a really exciting trip.
Oh, well, good luck, and maybe you'll be back soon to talk about that one in the near future. Well, unfortunately, we're just about out of time. If any of you have any more questions for Beulah or Luis, do feel free to come down to the front and ask them yourselves, and do have a look at some of the magnificent specimens that we've got on display for you to have a look at. But if you are back in the museum another day, do come back and see us. Nature Live runs every day here in the Attenborough studio, and we have a different scientist coming out each day to talk about their work and what they're getting up to. So do come back and see us again. But thank you very much for coming today, and do enjoy the rest of your visit with us. Thank you.